Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I have the honor to present you my final evidence from my course Art and Culture, in which, through a brochure, I'm going to explain the evolution from the neoclassicism to minimalism, an art period that we can still find nowadays. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Since immemorial times, man has expressed his feelings through various means, being communication the most effective and commonly used until today. However, on countless occasions, the human being would fall into the need for the search for other means, when a word makes it impossible to express themselves. Hence, the phrase "a picture is worth 1,000 words" would arise, because man would find art a tool to express their feelings in a free way, because inside the picture they could exemplify from the daily life to the deepest of their dreams. Aspects that with the passage of time would change and evolve until the time that we are today, using various techniques to exemplify individually the way in which with just a little creativity and some patience we recreate a piece of our reality that marks us every day. The main objective of the brochure is based on the exposure of certain artistic periods, to know their differences, exponents, artistic pieces, as well as the perception of reality by the artist. In this way, we can be more aware of all the changes that occurred to be in the position in which art is today. The first artistic period that I will talk about is Neoclassicism, which dates from late 18th century to early 19th century. Some of the main characteristics of this artistic period are: it was focused on classic and Greek art. This period directly reacted against the Baroque and its exaggeration. Religion wasn't important as previous periods. It was an intellectual period, since it was developed during the Enlightenment. Buildings characterized by simplicity, symmetrical shapes, and very high columns. Paintings, on the other hand, characterized by their patriotism, political events, and their clean lines made with a lot of precision. And finally, the sculptures were commonly static, and their main material was marble. Some of the most important artists and examples are Jacques David with Napoleon crossing the Alps, Antonio Canaova with Paulina Bonaparte, and Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres with Apotheosis of Homer. The next art period that I'm going to talk about is Romanticism, which dates from early 19th century but flourished until mid-century. Some of the most important characteristics of this artistic period are: music has an important influence within the period. Musicians such as Schubert, Beethoven, and Chopin emerged. It reacted to neoclassicism, since unlike it, the most important thing is the subjectivity, the feelings and passions, in contrast to the cold and objective neoclassical art. The art patrons or mecenas were not needed anymore. There was more independency. The supernatural and exotic was a recurring theme, usually found within the England literature of the time. Painting seemed more abstract than concrete and much more symbolical than the classic figurative. The main artists and examples are Caspar David Friedrich with Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, Franz Gerhard von Kuhlgen with Portrait of Caspar David Friedrich, and Theodor Gericolt with Portrait of a Kleptomaniac. The next art period that I will be talking about is Realism, which dates from late 18th century to 19th century. Some of the most important things of this artistic period are: paintings were portraying quotidianity and daily life situations, having as its main goal the representation of reality. Reality was shown through a crude way, reflecting it as it was, including infidelity, problems in marriage, and unfortunately, poverty. In painting, artists related veracity, putting themselves in no political or idealistic posture. Also, the color palette chosen was usually related to darker tones than usual, avoiding any type of dignity of the kings or religious figures from the past. One of the most important elements of the period was the rise of photography. Some of the main artists and examples are Millet with Gleaners, Louis Daguerre with one of the first photos that was ever taken, and Gustavo Courbet with the Stonebreakers. Now, I will proceed to talk about the second part of the brochure, which talks about the avant-garde movements and some of the most important artistic periods from the contemporary art. The first art period that I'm going to talk about is Fauvism, which was born between 1903 and 1904. Some of the main characteristics of this art period are the expression of vibrant and strong colors playing with values and intensities. The color used doesn't have to match with the object. Also, the contrast of colors is deliberated. Also, spontaneity, lines drawn on canvas and suggested by texture of paint. Some of the main artists and its examples are Henri Matisse with Madame Matisse, Raoul Duffy with Boats at Martigues, and André Derain with Charing Cross Bridge. The next art period that I'm going to talk about is Cubism, from 1907 to 1914. This art period emphasized in the flat two-dimensional surface of the picture plane. Also, it rejected several traditional techniques used at the time, such as perspective, modeling, chiaroscuro, and foreshortening. Subsequently, it broke paradigms based on the theories that art should always imitate nature. Also, paintings are mostly composed of cubes and different geometrical figures. And finally, there's a rejection of just a single viewpoint in favor of showing the fragmented subject from various different points of view. In this art period, we can mainly find two famous artists. The first one is Pablo Picasso with the Young Ladies of Avignon, and the second one is George Braque with Casas en l'Estaque. Next up is Surrealism, which dates from 1920 to 1950. This art period has some characteristics such as the search of the subconscious, which was liberated through painting. Also, elements of painting depicted in a magical way, usually similar to a dream. Rationality had no place in Surrealism. And finally, in literature, the automatic writing emerged. The main exponents from Surrealism are Salvador Dalí with the persistence of memory, René Magritte with the betrayal of images, and finally the writer André Breton with Surrealist Manifesto. Now I'm going to talk about some of the most important art periods from contemporary art. Subsequently, I will talk about Abstract Expressionism, which dates from 1943 to the mid-50s. In the case of Abstract Expressionism, the figurative is forgotten. Now, it's all about the expression of the artist. Also, artists were disappointed with the world, and this was transmitted through art. Paintings are characterized by having very expressive lines and colors. Also, action painting style emerged. And finally, canvas were the new format of painting. In the case of Abstract Expressionism, the main artists are Jackson Pollock with number 31, Mark Rothko with Orange and Yellow, and finally, Willem de Kooning with Excavation. Another really known period from contemporary art is pop art, which dates from mid to late 50s. Superficial and very simplified themes is one of the main characteristics from pop art, as well as no need for a thoughtful reflection. Several products such as ketchup, soup, among others were created in series, so there's really not an original work. The four arts are big, but the colors are limited. And finally, artists used to glamorize artists from music to the cinema. The most important exponents in here are Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe. Now, some of the well-known exponents from pop art are Andy Warhol with Campbell's Soup Can, Roy Lichtenstein with Drowning Girl, and Richard Hamilton with Interior. Finally, we've arrived to the end of this brochure, and we have minimalism, dating from 1960, and we can even find it nowadays. The main characteristic of minimalism is simplicity, since it reduces elements of art to its base. Also, the appearance of either paintings or sculptures are clear and simple. The place in which the piece is placed is really essential. Also, works were presented untitled. And finally, there are not frames in the paintings. The most important artists from minimalism are Donald Judd, Robert Morris, and finally, Dan Graham. I hope this brochure was helpful to you in order to understand the evolution from neoclassicism to minimalism. Thank you for your time and have an excellent day.